The rain started the way November rain always starts in Charlotte. Not gradually, not with any warning you could act on, but all at once, like a decision had been made somewhere above the city, and nobody on the ground was consulted. I was standing under the awning outside the Piedmont Culinary Invitational at 7:48 on a Saturday evening, waiting for a valet who had my keys and my dignity, and was taking his time returning either. When I became aware that Camille Bernard was standing 3 feet to my right doing the same thing. We had not spoken directly since the appetizer round 3 hours earlier, when we had been stationed at adjacent tables and managed the specific professional performance of two people who are aware of each other constantly and making sustained eye contact with everyone else. This was standard for us. We were good at it. We had been practicing for 2 years at every culinary event in a 4-county radius. She was looking at her phone. Her chef's jacket was gone. She'd changed into a dark blazer, hair down from the knot she worked in. She had a to-go container in one hand that I knew without looking contained the dessert she'd brought tonight. A brown butter financier with preserved lemon cream, two of which had come back untouched from her table because the event coordinator had miscommunicated the nut allergy list. She hadn't said anything about it. She had absorbed the information when it happened with the specific composure of someone who has been cooking professionally long enough to know that some things are the event coordinator's fault, and the correct response is to continue. I respected that. I had respected a great many things about Camille Bernard over 2 years, while maintaining the careful position that she was my primary professional competition in this market, and not examining that position too closely. The rain was coming sideways now, past the edge of the awning, and the valet line was not moving. Then a voice from behind us, young, immediate, carrying the particular unfiltered energy of someone who had not yet learned to edit themselves around strangers. Camille. Oh my God. It is really coming down. There's no way the lift is coming for another 40 minutes. The app just said 40 minutes. Camille. I'm telling you. The young woman who materialized beside Camille was maybe 20, carrying a large tote bag and wearing the expression of someone who had been having an excellent evening before the sky intervened. She had the same jaw as her sister, the same direct eyes. She was also soaking wet from the run between the parking garage and the awning, which she did not appear to have fully registered yet. Camille looked at her with an expression I recognized from competition settings. Controlled, processing, calculating the available options without letting any of that show in her face. Nadia, she said. 40 minutes, Nadia said. My car was already here. I had just taken the keys from the valet. The parking garage was directly opposite the awning, a distance that would take approximately 12 seconds in fair weather and currently looked like a crossing of the English Channel. I did not think about it. I have room, I said. Both of them looked at me. Rowan Callahan, I said to Nadia, since she clearly didn't know who I was. I have a car. If you two need a ride. Camille looked at me in a way I had become familiar with over 2 years. The look that evaluated, that did not give anything away, that was deciding. You don't have to, she started. I know, I said. She held my gaze for one beat. Then, Nadia. This is Rowan. He's a chef. Are you her friend? Nadia asked me. Camille closed her eyes briefly. We work in the same field, I said, because it was the most accurate sentence I had. Is that code for something? Nadia said. Nadia, Camille said. I'm asking because it sounds like code, Nadia said. Let's go. It's raining. We went. My name is Rowan Callahan. I am 32 years old, and I own a patisserie on Central Avenue in Charlotte called Millwork, which has 15 seats, a pastry case that changes daily, and a reputation that is, by most accounts, too good for the square footage. I am self-taught, which is a detail that has followed me through every review, every feature, every competition the way a footnote follows a footnote. Not inaccurate, but never quite the most important thing in the room. And yet always mentioned first. I grew up watching my grandmother bake in a kitchen in Greensboro that smelled like butter and vanilla extract and the particular patience required to make things slowly. She baked the way certain people cook, Not from recipes, from knowledge. From having made the same thing enough times that she understood what it needed at each stage, before the evidence was visible, because she knew the process from the inside. She died when I was 19. I went to culinary school for 8 months, could not afford to finish, and spent the next 7 years in other people's kitchens learning the things she had already tried to teach me, which was that the chemistry of baking is not a constraint. It is a conversation. You propose something, the ingredients respond, you adjust, the thing becomes what it wanted to be, and your job was to listen carefully enough to help it get there. I opened Millwork at 29 with money I did not quite have, and a location that everyone said was wrong. In 2 years we had been in Bon Appetit, had a 4-month waitlist for private event cakes, and won the Piedmont Culinary Invitational in our category twice. The first time felt like proof. The second time felt like the beginning of something I hadn't named yet. Camille Bernard had won the Invitational 3 times before I entered the picture, and had placed in every major regional competition in the Carolinas for 4 consecutive years. She was the executive pastry chef at Harmon, a farm-to-table restaurant on South Tryon that had a Michelin recommendation and a dining room that stayed full-on reservations made 6 weeks out. She had trained at the Culinary Institute of America, staged in Lyon, and worked in 2 3-star kitchens before she was 28. She was the most technically disciplined pastry chef working in this city, and I knew this because I had read everything written about her, which I had always classified as competitive research, and am now reclassifying as something I was not ready to look at directly. We had been compared in every local food review written in the last 2 years. The comparisons were always framed as contrast, her precision against my instinct, her formal training against my self-taught approach, her restaurant's resources against my 15 seats. The implication being that we were opposite ends of the same spectrum. I had always found the framing reductive. I had also always thought, privately and without evidence, that she found it flattering. I had been wrong about that along with several other things. The car smelled like the brioche I had transported to the event that morning and never fully aired out. I had one brief moment of hoping this was not the detail Camille Bernard would remember from the evening. "It smells amazing in here," Nadia said, from the back seat. "It's brioche," I said. "Can I ask you something?" Nadia said, "since we're stuck in traffic and it's raining and Camille is doing the thing where she stares out the window when she doesn't want to talk." Camille was in fact looking out the passenger window. "Nadia," she said. "I'm just going to ask," Nadia said. "Are you two actually rivals, or is that a thing you both made up?" I kept my eyes on the rain-darkened road. "We compete in the same market," Camille said, to the window. "You compete in the same market," Nadia said. "Okay, and does competing in the same market explain why you, Nadia—" "I'm asking him," Nadia said. "Rowan, does competing in the same market explain why she talks about you every single night?" The rain was very loud on the roof of the car. Camille turned from the window. She looked at her sister with the expression of a woman who was calculating the distance to the next intersection and whether she could open the door without creating a traffic incident. "I don't," she started. "You do," Nadia said. Not unkindly. With the specific factual certainty of a younger sibling who has been keeping track. "Last Tuesday, Rowan's caramel technique is actually really interesting. I don't know where he learned it. 2 Thursdays ago, the Millwork financier got a write-up in The Observer, and it was accurate, which is unusual. Last week when you were testing the new tasting menu, I want to try something with texture contrast the way Rowan does." "Camille." "Every night." She sat back. "I'm not making it up. I have receipts. They're in my phone. I can show him." Camille was looking straight ahead now. Her hands were in her lap. She was doing the composure thing again, the processing without displaying, except it was working less completely than usual. I made the light at Queens Road and said nothing, because I was the kind of person who understood that some silences were not fulfilling. After a moment, "Where am I dropping you?" I asked. Neutral, giving her the route out if she needed one. "Nadia's at Queen's University of Charlotte," Camille said. "On campus." "And then you?" I said. A pause. South Tryon, she said, near Harmon. Okay, I said. We drove for a while in the rain. The city outside was what Charlotte was in November, ambitious and unfinished. Always in the middle of becoming something. Cranes everywhere on the skyline, buildings that had been one thing a year ago now, being something else. I had always felt affectionately toward the city for this reason. It was still figuring out what it wanted to be, which was an attitude I understood. The caramel thing, I said. Keeping my eyes on the road. She's right that I learned it from someone unusual. A chocolatier in Asheville who was trained in Belgium. He used a dry method most people don't have the patience for. Camille turned her head slightly. The texture contrast, I said. Is she talking about the honey tuile on the autumn tasting? Yes, Camille said, before she could stop herself. I've been working on that for 6 months, I said. The challenge is getting it brittle enough to provide resistance without cracking under pressure from the spoon. I glanced at her briefly. I solved it 3 weeks ago. Tapioca maltodextrin in the base. Not my idea. I read it in a 2019 paper on confectionery physics. She looked at me. Confectionery physics is a field. At Wageningen University, I said. The Netherlands. They've been publishing since 2014. Very useful if you're self-taught and don't have anyone to ask. The sentence landed the way I had intended it, without aggression, without apology. Just the fact of it. She received it the way I had hoped, which was without the condescension I had been braced for, and with something more interesting instead. The Observer review was accurate, she said. The thing about the financier. The writer understood what you were doing with the brown butter temperature. She looked forward. Most reviewers don't get that specific. They describe the taste and call it warmth. He described the technique. You read it carefully, I said. I read everything about pastry carefully, she said. That's just what I do. I know, I said. I read the Bon Appetit piece on the Harmon dessert course 3 times. She looked at me. The lamination on your croissant program, I said. The piece called it flawless, which is accurate, but it didn't explain why, and I wanted to understand why, so I read it multiple times looking for the clue in the description. I glanced at her again. The clue was the word translucent. You're doing 81 layers, not the standard 60. You're going longer on each fold. Camille Bernard looked at me from the passenger seat of my car in the Charlotte rain, with an expression I had never gotten from her across a competition table, or a culinary event, or any of the rooms we had shared for 2 years. She looked surprised. Not offended. Not guarded. Just surprised. In the specific way of someone who expected one thing and received another, and is recalibrating. Nadia, she said, without taking her eyes off me. Yes, Nadia said from the back seat. Innocently, close your eyes, Camille said. Absolutely not, Nadia said. Queen's University appeared ahead of us through the rain. I pulled up to the main campus entrance, and Nadia gathered her tote bag with the exaggerated leisure of someone trying to slow the proceedings. Nadia, Camille said. I'm going, Nadia said. Rowan, it was very nice to meet you. You're exactly what I thought you'd be like. What did you think I'd be like? I said. Someone she'd have a hard time not talking about, Nadia said, and got out of the car before Camille could respond. She leaned back in through the door before closing it, looking past her sister at me, and said, Every single night, Rowan. I'm not even exaggerating. Good luck. Then the door closed and she jogged toward the campus entrance and disappeared into the rain and the light. Camille looked straight ahead. I pulled back into traffic. We drove for approximately 1 minute without speaking, which given the length of the drive remaining was either going to be the longest minute of the evening or the last one before she directed me to let her out at a bus stop. I don't know why she said that, Camille said. Flat and honest, the way you say things when you've decided the managed version isn't worth the effort. I do, I said. Rowan, she said it because it's true, I said. And she's 20. And hasn't learned yet that truth is not always the opening move. Camille looked at me. She's not wrong. I changed lanes carefully. The rain was coming in sheets now, the kind that reduced Charlotte at night to a blur of red taillights and reflected yellow street lamps, and the shapes of things you mostly had to trust were still there. I read your work obsessively, she said, without inflection, as if she were reading from a document. The way you approach flavor pairing, the way you use texture to create the experience of contrast without competing elements. The March tasting menu with the deconstructed opera cake, I read the preview and spent 2 days thinking about the construction of it. She paused. I told myself it was competitive intelligence. I told myself the same thing, I said. She looked at me. The Harmon dessert course right up, I said. The Bon Appetit piece. The Observer profile last spring. I looked at the road. The interview you gave Charlotte Magazine where you talked about your grandmother's cooing a man and how it was the first thing that made you understand that baking was a form of patience rather than a form of control. I kept my voice even. I read that interview in one sitting and then went back and read it again. The city moved past us in the rain. I have a grandmother's cooing a man story too, I said. Mine was her pound cake. Different pastry, same principle. Camille was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know that about you, she said. I never said it in an interview, I said. I wasn't sure anyone would read it charitably coming from someone self-taught. She turned to look at me fully. I have never, in 2 years, in any context, thought of self-taught as a limitation when it comes to your work. I want to be direct about that. She held my gaze. The write-ups say it like a caveat. It isn't one. What you do at Millwork cannot be learned at a culinary institution, because culinary institutions teach you to make things correctly. What you do is make things truthfully, which is a different skill and in some ways a harder one. I pulled onto South Tryon and found the block she needed. Pulled to the curb, stopped, the rain came down. I turned to look at her for the first time since the Queen's University drop-off, properly. Not at the road and not sideways. Can I ask you something? I said. Yes, she said. The Piedmont Invitational 2 years ago. My first year. She held my gaze. I placed fourth, I said. Which was fine. I was new. But I got a note afterward, anonymous, through the event coordinator, about the brown butter temperature on my tart submission. I paused. The note was specific enough that whoever wrote it understood exactly what I was attempting and what had narrowly not worked. It changed the way I approached the dish. The next year I won the category. I looked at her. Was that you? Camille's expression shifted, something underneath the careful composure. Not guilt, something that had been sitting with her. Yes, she said. Why? I said. Because you were almost there, she said. And the judges weren't going to tell you why you'd placed fourth. They were just going to place you fourth, and it seemed like a waste. She held my gaze steadily. You had done something technically interesting that hadn't quite resolved. I thought you should know what it was. You were also competing for the same award, I said. I won that year regardless, she said. My note didn't change my outcome. It changed mine, I said. I know, she said. That was the intention. I looked at the rain on the windshield. Charlotte at night, blurred and amber and constant, the city building itself around us while we sat still in it. You've been paying attention for 2 years, I said, and sending anonymous notes, and rebuilding my dessert technique through your sister's apartment. I looked at her. Why didn't you just say something? The question sat between us. Because we're competing in the same market, she said. And then, more quietly, and because saying something would have required me to be honest about more than the brown butter temperature. I looked at her for a long moment. The rain on the roof of the car, the city outside. I'm going to ask if you'd have dinner with me, I said. Not as colleagues, not as competition, just dinner. Somewhere quiet, where we can talk about things other than technique. I held her gaze. I've been wanting to ask for a while and kept finding professional reasons not to. I've run out of professional reasons. Camille Bernard looked at me with an expression that was not the competition look, not the composed processing look, not the look she gave reviewers and event coordinators in the Charlotte food press. It was the look of a woman who had been paying careful attention to a specific thing for 2 years and had just been offered permission to stop pretending she wasn't. "Tuesday," she said. "There's a place on the east side. Hazel. It's not a culinary scene restaurant, which means we can eat there without being interviewed." "Tuesday," I said. "Don't bring anything," she said. "I know that's your instinct." "Don't." "My instinct is to bring pastry," I said, "to every situation." "I know," she said. "Don't." The corner of her mouth, just the corner. "I've had your pastry. It's not what I need you to bring." Then she opened the door and went through the rain to the building entrance, and I sat in the idling car watching her go with the specific sensation of a man who has just said the thing he needed to say and is not entirely sure the ground is where he left it. My baker, a 24-year-old named Toms who arrived at millwork at 4 every morning and ran the opening production with a precision I had not asked for and could not have manufactured, appeared in the kitchen doorway on Monday morning while I was working the lamination on a new croissant test and looked at me with the expression he used when he had something to say and was calculating the cost. "You're doing the triple fold wrong," he said. "I'm testing something," I said. "You've been testing it for 40 minutes, he said. "That's not a test. That's a conversation you're having with the dough instead of the thing you're actually thinking about." He was 24 and had been baking since he was 16 and had no patience for indirect communication. It was one of his best qualities and occasionally also a liability. "There's a dinner Tuesday," I said. He went back to his station. "I know," he said. "How do you know?" "Because you've reorganized the pastry case twice this morning and you do that when you're thinking about something other than the pastry case," he said. "It's the same thing you did before the invitational, except you're not nervous about the invitational." I looked at the dough. "Is it the chef from Harmon?" he said, matter-of-factly, the way he said everything. I did not ask how he knew about Camille Bernard. Toms absorbed information about the Charlotte food scene the way a good sponge absorbed liquid, completely, without appearing to try. "It's dinner," I said. "Okay," he said. "The lamination test is good, by the way. The fold angle is wrong on the left side. Adjust by about 5 degrees." He was right. I adjusted by 5 degrees and went back to thinking about Tuesday. Hazel was on Central Avenue, 6 blocks from Millwork, which I chose not to mention because the proximity felt like the universe was either being helpful or ironic and I wasn't ready to determine which. It was a small restaurant with an open kitchen and a menu that changed seasonally and a reputation built entirely on the quality of the thing in front of you, rather than the ambiance around it. Camille arrived 2 minutes after me. Dark coat, her hair down the way it had been in the rain, a gray sweater that looked like it had been chosen the way she chose everything, specifically, without appearing to try. She sat across from me and looked at the menu for 30 seconds and set it down, which was how I knew she had read the menu online in advance, which was exactly what I had done. "Braised short rib," she said. "Same," I said. She looked at me. "Did you read the menu beforehand?" "Of course. Me too." Something warmed in her expression. "My sous chef told me I was overthinking dinner. I told him I don't underthink anything." "What did he say?" "He said he knew." She picked up her water glass. "What did your team say?" "My baker told me I was having a conversation with the dough instead of the thing I was actually thinking about." I held her gaze. "He was accurate. How long has he worked for you?" "Since the beginning. He was the first hire. He was 22 and had never worked in a professional kitchen, and he showed up to the interview with a croissant he'd made at home, and the croissant was better than mine." I paused. "I hired him on the spot." "You hired someone whose croissant was better than yours?" She said it without the condescension I had anticipated. With something closer to respect. "It would have been stupid not to," I said. "If what I'm building is going to be good, it has to be better than what I can do alone." She held her glass. My mentor at the CIA told me that in my second year, she said. He said the chefs who build things that last are the ones who are genuinely glad when someone on their team exceeds them. She paused. It took me another 5 years to actually believe it was possible to feel that way. Do you, now? Yes, she said. My pastry team at Harmon is excellent. 3 of them are better than me in specific areas, and I can tell you exactly which areas, and I'm proud of it. She met my eyes. It took a long time to stop feeling like that was evidence of my own deficiency. What changed? I said. I stopped measuring myself against what I should be and started measuring the work against what it could be, she said. Different standard. More useful. She looked at the table. My grandmother was a much better baker than I am. She never went to culinary school, and she could feel when the dough was ready in a way I've never been able to duplicate technically. I've been chasing her intuition for 12 years, and I think I'm finally starting to understand that chasing is the wrong verb. I looked at her across the table. What's the right verb? She thought about it. Learning to listen, she said. That's different from chasing. Chasing implies the thing is moving away from you. I thought about my grandmother in the kitchen in Greensboro, the specific sound of the stand mixer, the smell of vanilla extract in a space that was warm from the oven, the way she would open the oven door and look without touching and already know. She knew without touching, I said. Camille looked at me. My grandmother, too. How? She'd smell the air in the kitchen, she said. The way it changed when things were almost ready. She said baking announced itself if you were paying attention. A pause. I've been chasing that my entire career. The thing where the kitchen tells you. Is that why the lamination? I said. 81 layers. You're trying to find the point where the pastry tells you something before it's finished. She held my gaze. I've never heard anyone describe it that way. That's what it looks like from the outside, I said. Someone trying to find the moment before the moment. The short rib arrived. We ate. The restaurant was warm and specific around us. The open kitchen visible through a pass-through, 2 chefs working the Saturday dinner service, with the calm economy of people who know their stations completely. I watched them the way I always watched kitchens, looking for the rhythm of it, the specific choreography of people who trusted each other enough to stop explaining and just move. You watch other people cook, Camille said. I noticed it at the invitational too. You look at other people's technique the way most chefs look at their own plating. I learned more from watching than from formal instruction, I said. It became a habit. What do you see when you watch me? She said. Directly, the way she said things that mattered. I looked at her, someone who was taught the rules so thoroughly that she can now feel exactly where they need to be broken. I paused. The thing that makes the Harmon dessert course distinctive is not that it's technically correct. It's that you know where technically correct stops being enough, and something harder is required. You have the formal structure, and you're building outside it. I held her gaze. That's very difficult. Most formally trained chefs build within the structure their whole careers. She looked at her plate for a moment. Then, my mentor would hate that analysis. Why? Because his position is that the structure is the point, she said. He thinks transcending technique is romantic language for inconsistency. She picked up her fork. We've been having that argument for 11 years. Who's winning? Currently it's a draw, she said. He's starting a new restaurant. In New York. He's asked me to come on as culinary director. She said it the way you say things you've been turning over privately and have decided to put on the table. I haven't given him an answer. I looked at her. The table between us suddenly had a different weight. When do you have to decide? I said. End of the month. She held my gaze. It's a significant opportunity. He has the backing and the location and a James Beard Foundation conversation already in progress. A pause. And I've been here for 4 years, and I know this kitchen completely, and I know this city, and I know what I'm building here, and She stopped. I haven't been sure what to do with any of that. When did he ask? 3 weeks ago. Before or after the invitational? She looked at me. Before, she said. 2 days before. I sat with that. The invitational where Nadia had been in the back seat. The rain. Everything that followed from the moment a 20-year-old had said she talks about you every single night without calculating the consequences. Does he know you haven't decided? I said. He thinks I'm deliberating on the professional merits, she said. Which I am. Among other things. What are the other things? She looked at me for a long moment. That's a question I was going to answer after dinner, she said. Answer it now, I said. I'd rather know. She set her fork down, put her hands in her lap. The restaurant moved around us. I built something here, she said. Not just at Harmon, in this city, in this food community, in the specific kitchen I have with a specific team I've built. I've been telling myself the New York offer is obviously the right professional move and trying to understand why it doesn't feel obviously right. She held my gaze. Nadia asked me the same question 2 weeks ago. She said, "What would you be leaving?" And I started listing things. The kitchen, the team, the Charlotte market and where it's going. She paused. And then I listed you. She made me write it down. I looked at her. I listed your caramel technique, she said, and the corner of her mouth moved, acknowledging the precision of the statement. Your tapioca tuile. The way you described the kouign-amann. The invitational conversation we were never quite having. She held my gaze. I listed a great deal that fell under the category of you specifically, and Nadia circled the whole list and said, Camille, those are not professional considerations. The kitchen made its kitchen sounds. Someone behind me at another table laughed at something, and then the laughter subsided. Nadia is very direct, I said. She learned it from watching me, and overcorrected in the most useful possible direction, she said. She says what I calculate. What did you calculate when you listed me? I said. Camille looked at her hands. Then back up at me. That I had been studying you for 2 years and calling it competition, and that what I was actually doing was paying attention to someone I found interesting in a way that went past interesting into something I didn't have the right professional context for. Her voice was level. Precise. The way she was precise about things that mattered, and that if I went to New York without saying anything about that, I would spend the rest of my career in an extremely well-funded kitchen, wondering whether I had left the wrong thing behind. I said, the anonymous note. She waited. You sent it after one competition, I said. You could have sent it after any of them. You'd been watching my work for 2 years. But you sent it that one time. I held her gaze. Why that time? She was quiet for a moment. Because that was the time you were closest, she said. And I thought if I didn't say something, you wouldn't know what the distance between close and there actually was. She paused. And I didn't want to watch you not know. Outside on Central Avenue, the Charlotte night went on building itself, a city in permanent mid-construction, cranes and foundations and buildings in the middle of becoming. I had always found it clarifying, living in a city that wore its work in progress state openly, that didn't pretend to be finished. I need to ask you something, I said. Ask it, she said. If the New York opportunity wasn't there, if that wasn't a variable, what would the answer be? To this, to Tuesday dinner, to what Nadia said in the car. She looked at me for a long time. It would be considerably simpler, she said. What's the answer in the simpler version? That I have been interested in you since you described your grandmother's pound cake as your culinary foundation in an interview 2 years ago, and I thought, that person bakes the way I want to bake and does not know it yet. She held my gaze. And that every conversation we almost had at a competition and then didn't have because we were being professional about it cost me something I kept not accounting for. A pause. The simpler version's answer is yes, Rowan, unambiguously. And the complicated version? I said. The complicated version requires me to decide something important before the end of the month, she said. and I would rather decide it honestly than decide it around something I haven't given a real chance. I understood what she was saying. She was precise. She didn't want to make a major professional decision inside the influence of something new, something that hadn't proven its shape yet. "What would you need?" I said. She looked at me with the expression that was not the competition look and not the composed look, but the third thing, the one Nadia had apparently been watching for weeks in her sister's apartment. The one that looked like Camille Bernard when she wasn't being Camille Bernard for anyone in particular. "Time," she said. "Not a lot. Just enough to understand what this actually is before I decide what to do around it." "I have time," I said. "You might not want to give it," she said. "You don't know yet what I'm like outside a professional context." "Tell me something I'd want to know," I said. She looked at the table. "Then, I eat cereal for dinner when I'm testing new desserts, because my brain can't hold two flavor profiles at once. I have a standing argument with my sous chef about whether miso belongs in pastry that has been ongoing for 11 months. I am a genuinely poor loser, which I have managed to conceal professionally with great effort for many years." She met my eyes. "And I talk about your work to my sister every night apparently without realizing the cumulative pattern I was creating." "That's a good list," I said. "It's not a great list," she said. "It's accurate," I said. "That matters more." Her shoulders settled slightly. The smallest thing, a fraction of the composure she carried redistributing into something less necessary. "Tell me something I'd want to know," she said. I thought about what was true and had not been said. "I have the anonymous note," I said. "The one from the first invitational. I kept it. It's in the office at Millwork behind the lamination schedule." A pause. I don't know what I thought I was keeping it for. I told myself it was a technical reference. It's been 2 years and I haven't looked at the technical content again. I just kept it. Camille looked at me. "Because it was the first time someone in this industry understood specifically what I was attempting," I said. "Not what it tasted like, what it was trying to do." I held her gaze. That felt like something worth keeping. She looked at her plate, at the candle between us that had burned down over the course of dinner, at her hands. Then she looked at me and said, "I'll make you something." I waited. "Not from Harmon," she said. "From my home kitchen. Saturday morning. I want to show you something I've been working on for 6 months that isn't on any menu anywhere and I haven't shown anyone because I wasn't sure it was finished." She met my eyes. "I think it might be finished. I want to see what you think." "That's not nothing," I said. "Showing someone unfinished work." "I know," she said. "I'm not offering it as nothing." Saturday morning, she opened the door of her apartment on South Tryon in a flour-dusted apron and the expression of someone who had been at this for a while. Her kitchen smelled like brown butter and something floral I couldn't immediately identify. "Rose," she said, before I asked. "From actual petals, not extract. Sit down. It's almost ready." I sat at her kitchen table, which was a large butcher block surface covered at one end with test bowls and a notebook filled with handwritten notes in the specific shorthand of someone working through a technical problem. She moved through the kitchen with the economy of someone who knew every inch of the space, where each tool was, the precise heat setting she needed, the timing she was tracking by instinct rather than timer. I watched her work. She had her hair back, loose knot, the same way she worked in competition. She was talking half to herself and half to me as she moved, narrating the construction of the thing, a layered entremet, rose and honey and a bitter almond base, with a glaze that she was working at the stovetop now, stirring with the specific patience of a woman who has learned that this particular process cannot be rushed. "The problem for 6 months," she said, without looking up, was that the rose was overwhelming the honey in the top layer. The flavors weren't in conversation. The rose was announcing itself, and the honey was being polite about it. She adjusted the heat. I tried 17 variations on the honey component, different florals, different temperatures, different ratios, and nothing worked. "What worked?" I said. "I stopped trying to balance them," she said. "I stopped treating it as a ratio problem." The honey is not trying to match the rose. The honey is the foundation the rose is built on. Different structural role. She glanced at me over her shoulder. The rose can be as present as it wants to be once the honey is doing the right job. I looked at her. You solved a flavor layering problem by rethinking the load-bearing structure. I solved it the way you solve any problem where two things won't work together, she said. You stop trying to make them equal and figure out what each one is actually for. She plated the entremet with the focused efficiency of a professional who no longer needed to think about plating. It simply happened at the right speed and in the right arrangement. Set it in front of me. Sat down across the table with her hands around a coffee cup and the expression of someone who has made the thing and is now separate from it, waiting for the world to respond. I tasted it. The honey landed first. Then, a beat later, the rose, present and specific, and not competing with anything because it had the space it needed. The bitter almond underneath moved through everything like a key change. It was the best thing I had tasted in a year and possibly longer. Camille, I said. I know what you're going to say, she said. I don't think you do, I said. I was going to say that your grandmother's kitchen called. She looked at me. This is what you were chasing, I said. The thing she could do without trying. The moment where the kitchen tells you. I held her gaze. You got there. Something happened in her expression that I had not seen before and would not have a word for until later, which was the word arrived. The expression of someone who has been moving towards something for a very long time and has just recognized, through someone else's eyes, that they are there. I've been showing this to no one, she said quietly. I know, I said. Not because I didn't trust the work, she said. Because I needed someone who would understand what it was attempting, not just what it tasted like. She met my eyes. I needed someone who would hear the honey before the rose. I looked at the plate, at the glaze catching the morning light coming through her south-facing kitchen window, at the kitchen behind her, organized with the specific logic of someone who uses every inch and loses nothing, where every tool was where it needed to be, because she had thought carefully about where it needed to be. It should be on the menu, I said. It will be, she said. After I decide about New York. Because if I go to New York, it goes on a different menu, and if I stay, it goes on the Harmon menu and I know exactly where it lives in the tasting course. She held my gaze. The decision changes the context it belongs in. What are you deciding toward? I said. She held her coffee cup, looked at the table between us. I'm deciding toward the honest answer, she said, which is that I have built something here that is not finished. The team at Harmon. The work we're in the middle of. And, she looked up. Something I haven't been willing to call by the right name until recently. What's the right name? I said. I haven't said it out loud yet, she said. I'm working up to it. Take your time, I said. I've been taking too much time already, she said. That's what Nadia says. She says I run technical analysis on emotional situations and call it decision-making. She looked at me with the expression that was entirely hers, not the professional one, not the composed one, the one her sister had apparently been watching for weeks. She's right. Tell me what the analysis says, I said. The analysis says, Camille said, precisely, that I have been in this city for 4 years building something I love, in a kitchen I chose carefully, with people I trust, and that the New York offer is a significant professional opportunity that will be available to me in other forms in other years, because of the work I've done here. She held my gaze, and that I have been paying attention to a specific person for 2 years with increasingly inadequate professional justification, and that my sister's apartment has become a repository of information about his caramel technique and texture philosophy and Kuhn a Man story, and I need to stop organizing that into the competition folder, because it stopped fitting that folder approximately 18 months ago. I leaned forward slightly. What folder does it fit? She looked at me directly, steadily, with the specific quality of a person who has made a decision and has arrived at it cleanly. The one I've been trying not to open, she said. The morning light came through the window onto the kitchen table. The entremet sat between us, the honey and the rose, having reached whatever agreement they had finally reached after 6 months of working toward it. "Camille," I said. "Yes," she said. "That's what I'm saying." "Before you ask." "Yes," I looked at her. "Nadia is going to be insufferable about this," she said. "Nadia has earned insufferable," I said. She pressed her lips together around something that was not quite a smile, but was building toward one. "She said you'd be exactly what I said you were, and that I should stop treating it like a problem to be solved." "She's 20, and she already knows more than both of us," I said. "She's been telling me that for 3 years," she said. "I'm starting to accept it." I reached across the table and put my hand flat on the butcher block, between the test bowls and the notebook. Not reaching for her, just placing it, the way you place something you mean to leave there. She looked at my hand, then at me. Then she put her hand over mine. Her hands were the hands of someone who had been working in kitchens since she was a teenager, specific in a way that work makes hands specific. She held mine with the deliberate quality of a woman who touches things the way she builds things, with intention, without waste. "I'm not going to New York," she said. "I decided this morning. Before you came. I wanted you to know it wasn't decided because of you." She met my eyes. "It was decided because of what I'm building here, and because of what this," she looked at our hands, "is, which I'd rather find out than leave behind." A pause. "You're a secondary factor. That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me," I said. "Do not push it," she said. But she was smiling now. The real one. The one her sister had apparently been watching for. I called my mentor that afternoon. Not a chef, a man named Gerald Park, who had given me my first real kitchen job at 22 and had the specific authority of someone who has watched you fail and succeed and knows the difference. I told him about Tuesday. About Saturday morning, about the entremet and the honey and the rose, and the way she had solved the problem by rethinking what each thing was for. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The anonymous note." "Did you tell her you kept it?" "Yes," I said. "Good," he said. "That was the right thing." A pause. "She sounds like someone who builds things that last." "She is," I said. "So do you," he said. "You've just been too stubborn to see it." I went back to millwork on Sunday morning, the pre-dawn dark of Central Avenue, the specific quiet of the kitchen before anyone else arrived. I turned on the kitchen lights, which came up slowly over the pastry case and the counter and the 15 tables arranged exactly as I had arranged them when I opened, each one chosen for the quality of the light it received at different times of day. I went into the office. Found the lamination schedule on the wall. Behind it, folded once, the anonymous note from the first invitational 3 years ago. I took it down. Read it in the office light. Handwriting I now knew. Precise and direct, like its author. The brown butter temperature is almost right, you're pulling it at the right moment, but losing 2 degrees in the transfer. The flavor is correct. The execution is one adjustment away from being what you're intending. You know what you're building. Finish it. I folded it back. Put it in my chest pocket. Tom's arrived at 4:15. Set up the morning production without commentary. Began the croissant lamination with the 5-degree correction and the specific rhythm of someone who has done this enough times that the motion contains the knowledge. At 4:30, he said, from his station, the Harmon chef. "Yes," I said. "Good," he said, and went back to his lamination. Camille came in at noon. Not as a customer, she texted to ask if she could see the kitchen, which I had offered at some point during Saturday morning, and then hadn't explicitly confirmed. I texted back, "Come whenever." She came through the front door at noon exactly. Looked at the space the way she had looked at the entremet before she plated it. The specific assessment of someone who needed to understand what something was before she related to it. The 15 tables. The pastry case with the morning's remaining inventory. The warm light through the east windows. The thing I had designed the whole space around, the particular quality of light at this angle in this building on this block that I had identified before I signed the lease and had never mentioned in any interview. She looked at the light. "The windows are original," I said. "1940s glass. The light comes through at an angle that changes through the day. In the morning it lands on the pastry case. By afternoon it moves to the tables." I paused. The building told me to take it. She turned from the light and looked at me with the expression that was all the way open now. Not managed, not composed, not anything she had organized for someone else's benefit. "The building told you," she said. "The way your grandmother's kitchen told her when things were ready," I said. "You pay attention long enough, things tell you." She crossed the room and stood in the morning light that was moving slowly toward the tables and looked at the pastry case with the specific assessment of someone who understood what they were looking at. "Show me the kitchen," she said. I showed her the kitchen. She moved through it the way she moved through her own, reading it, understanding the logic of the arrangement, asking questions that contained the knowledge of someone who had thought about kitchen design as a form of intention. Where the lamination station was in relation to the walk-in. The height of the work surfaces, the placement of the plating area relative to the pass. At the lamination station, she put her hand flat on the marble surface, felt the cold of it. "What temperature do you keep the marble?" she said. 62 degrees in the room, I said. "The marble holds at 58. She looked at the surface, then at me. "That's 4 degrees colder than standard." "For my hands," I said. "I run warm. The extra 4 degrees gives me 30 seconds more working time on the delicate laminations." I paused. "It's a self-taught solution. No one taught me it was possible." She looked at me. "It's the best solution," she said. "I'm going to steal it." "Please do," I said. She smiled. The one that started in her eyes and then came forward. The one that was entirely hers. "Rowan," she said. "Yes, the note," she said. "The one I sent. You know what I couldn't say in the note, don't you? The thing that was actually true." I looked at her. I couldn't say, "I want to see what you do when you know it's right." That's what I was really writing. She held my gaze. "I wanted to see if you'd trust yourself." "Did I?" I said. "You won the next year," she said. "And the year after that. Because of the note," I said. "Because of what you did with the note," she said. "The note just told you the distance. You walked it." The kitchen was warm around us. The pastry case through the pass-through held the morning's work, the light moving slowly toward the tables, the building doing what it did at this hour. "I want to ask you something," I said. She waited. "The thing you're building at Harmon," I said. "The team. The dessert course. The direction you're taking it." I held her gaze. "Let me see it sometime." "Not as competition. As the thing it actually is, which I've been wanting to understand from the inside for 2 years." She looked at me for a long moment. "Come on a Tuesday," she said. "We close Mondays. Tuesday is when we run new development. You can see how the kitchen thinks." "I'd like that," I said. "And I'll come back here," she said. "When you're developing something. I want to see the process." "It's slow," I said. "I have a lot of conversations with dough." "I know," she said. "Your baker told me." I looked at her. "You talked to Tom's. He came out to say hello when I arrived. He said, 'You're the Harmon chef.' He's been reorganizing the pastry case all week." She tilted her head. "He seems like someone who tells the truth efficiently." "He's the best hire I ever made," I said. "His croissant is better than mine." "I know." She said, "I had one in January. It's excellent." I stared at her. "I came in on a Tuesday in January," she said, without apology, with the specific quality of someone who is done organizing things into incorrect folders. I sat at the table by the east window. I had the croissant and the brown butter tart and the coffee. I read the whole menu. She met my eyes. "You were in the back." "Tom's was on the counter." I didn't announce myself. "Why not?" I said. Because I wasn't ready to be honest about why I was there, she said. I told myself I was doing competitive research. And now? She looked at the morning light moving across the floor of millwork, the building built in 1940 that had told me to take it, the kitchen arranged exactly as my grandmother would have arranged hers, the pastry case that held the work of the morning, everything in its right position. Now, she said, I'm being honest about why I'm here. She reached into her coat pocket and put something on the lamination station between us. A card. Harmon letterhead. One sentence, in her handwriting. The brown butter was right. You knew it before I said anything. I just confirmed it. I looked at it. Looked at her. I wrote that in January, she said. After the Tuesday visit. I almost had Nadia give it to you. The corner of her mouth moved. Nadia said I should give it myself. She held my gaze. She was right. She usually is. I picked up the card. Put it next to the first note in my chest pocket, where it fit exactly. She's 20, I said. 20 and absolutely certain about everything, she said. It's horrifying and extremely useful. Outside, Central Avenue was Charlotte doing what Charlotte did, building itself forward, imperfect and committed, everything in the middle of becoming something. The city I had chosen because it was honest about its own construction, because it wore its work in progress nature openly, and did not pretend to be finished. I looked at Camille Bernard in my kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, flour on her jacket sleeve from leaning on my lamination station, her hair in the loose knot, her hands that had built something excellent last Saturday morning after 6 months of patient development. Someone who had found what she was chasing by rethinking what each element was for. Someone who had been paying attention for 2 years and calling it the wrong thing. Both of us, calling it the wrong thing. Stay for the afternoon production, I said. I'm developing something new. You can tell me what it needs. She looked at the kitchen, at the marble surface at 62 degrees, at the pastry case and the east window, and the light that told you where you were in the day. I'll need an apron, she said. Third hook from the left, I said. She got it. She tied it with the specific efficient motion of someone who has tied aprons for 20 years and came to stand beside me at the lamination station and put her hand on the marble surface and said, "What are we making?" I don't know yet, I said. That's the honest answer. I have the base and I know what direction it wants to go and I'm going to listen to it until it tells me the rest. She looked at me. You really do talk to the dough. You wait for the kitchen to tell you when things are ready, I said. Same principle. She considered this. That's annoyingly accurate, she said. I learned from watching people who know things, I said. There's someone I've been watching for 2 years. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Show me what you have." I showed her. We were there until 4 in the afternoon, and Tom's came back in at 2 to see if the new lamination test had resolved, and found us at the counter and said nothing, which was the most Tom's thing possible, and went to his station and started prep for Monday with the specific contentment of a person who has correctly identified a situation and decided not to improve on it. At 4, Camille untied the apron and hung it back on the third hook from the left. Tuesday, she said. Harmon, come at 6. We'll be in development. Tuesday, I said. She picked up her coat, looked at me with the expression that was entirely hers, the one that was all the way open, the one Nadia had been watching form for months in her sister's apartment, and had decided to name out loud in the back seat of a car in the rain. Rowan, she said. Yes, I talked about you every night, she said. For the record. Nadia wasn't exaggerating. I know, I said. I'm going to keep doing it, she said. Probably, the content is going to change, but the frequency is likely to remain the same. I'll give you material, I said. She pressed her lips together around the smile that was going to happen whether she authorized it or not. Then she went to the door. At the door she stopped. Turned, the card, she said. The one I just gave you. I have it, I said. It's accurate, she said. You knew before I said anything. You always know. You just need someone to confirm it occasionally. She held my gaze. I can do that. Then she went out onto Central Avenue and into the Charlotte afternoon, and I stood in the kitchen of Millwork with 2 notes in my chest pocket and the smell of the morning's work still in the air and the east light making its slow move toward the end of the day. Tom's appeared in the pass-through. Tuesday? He said. Tuesday, I said. He nodded. Went back to his prep. I went back to the new development. Put my hands on the marble surface at 58 degrees. Thought about what the thing was trying to be. Listened.